Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals about something that is near and dear to me and something that I personally believe is the single most important message that I put out with my work. And it's something I've been very open about. Anyone who tries to say otherwise clearly didn't follow me back in the day. I've been saying it publicly since 2012. I am an abuse survivor. I'm a child abuse survivor. And yes, that abuse was sexual in nature. It's been pretty well documented, and it's even one of my exes even said in an interview, yeah, it was true. So anyone who's denying it, you're pretty much wrong. So that being said, I have said for a long time, for me, it is an important mission statement to get abuse survivors under a barbell, or anyone with PTSD. And when I say abuse survivors, obviously I mean people who are child abuse survivors, whether it was just physical neglect or sexual in nature. The same with rape and sexual assault survivors, both men and women, because it does happen to both. Getting under a barbell is one of the best things you can possibly do. And the same thing applies even to military veterans who have PTSD. And I think people need to understand that. When it comes to those topics, trauma is trauma. And there's actually no difference in the brain there. In other words, that's been studied too. So people who have survived the horrors of war, the trauma of war, whether it's the things they had to do or the things that they experienced or saw, it has the same effect in the brain as far as the trauma goes of being raped or sexually assaulted. Your brain interprets it more or less the same. It's that extreme level of trauma that creates the PTSD that makes it impossible for you to properly regulate your flight or fight response. And I think this is what we're talking about. We talk about getting under the barbell, okay? Because when we get under a heavy bar, and when I say strength training, like you guys saw me doing, 500-pound squat right there. I'm doing rep work with 550 on a deadlift, doing rep work at 315 on the bench. I'm talking about heavy work. I'm 48 years old, guys. Okay? So when we talk about strength training, I mean lifting some heavy weights. I'm talking about doing a little powerlifting, doing some power building, getting under a heavy barbell. A lot of reasons. We could definitely discuss the fact that it has to do with never feeling weak again. That was a factor for me. Because when you're in those situations, you feel weak and helpless. And that applies to even soldiers. Yes, it applies to child abuse survivors. It applies to sexual assault survivors. It also applies to soldiers. They feel helpless, right? They feel helpless. And it doesn't matter if at one time they were one of the baddest mofos walking the face of the earth. Doesn't matter. That brain trauma, they feel helpless. And that's even more embarrassing, I think, for those guys. Like, dude, they were a bad mofo, to then feel helpless like that. That's even more demoralizing. But that's what we're dealing with. And it's that inability to regulate that flight or fight response. It's dysregulation of it. When we get under a heavy barbell, we are creating an environment. Like there's a panic involved. When you go to get under a 400-pound squat or a 500-pound or a 600-pound squat, there is a certain amount of fear. Okay? There is a fight or flight involved with that, especially on a squat. We could argue about the deadlift and the bench, but the squat in particular, because that weight's on top of you. And when you miss that lift, there's nowhere to go but down. Even if you got safety arms, even if you got spotters, you're going down under that weight. There's a fear. And it can create that response. It allows you to learn to regulate it. And it teaches you to regulate it in an environment where you are in control. You're setting the terms. You're the one approaching it. You've loaded that bar. That bar's ready. You're choosing to be under that bar. Okay? That's powerful. And I'm not saying this is a replacement for therapy. I know therapists, I've known of therapists at this point running programs for like powerlifting for people with PTSD. Like it's part of the therapy. Like, my God, that's powerful. That is so powerful. And those therapists are doing amazing work. Like, to me, that is absolutely amazing. If they're realizing that, hey, we can take this other endeavor and we can use it to help these people as part of the therapy. But then what else comes with it? That self-esteem, that never feeling weak, because everyone who's experienced those things, we felt weak and helpless. For me, that was one of the reasons I got strong. I felt helpless and weak as a child. I felt helpless, and I made that choice. I'm like, I am never going to be overpowered by another person the rest of my life. I'm never going to feel weak or helpless ever again. And I took it pretty far. That was my motivation for getting under that heavy bar. I never wanted to feel helpless again. But guess what? It builds you up, because before long you realize, I am strong, I am powerful, I am not helpless. As you get stronger and stronger, then what else happens? We talk about self-worth, we talk about self-esteem. You're putting in hard work. Think about programming your brain. You're now putting in hard work towards being strong and being better. Consistently, hard work over and over and over and over and over. Voluntary hardship for the purpose of self-improvement. And when we're dealing with strength, that's quantifiable. Physique is more subjective, right? Physique is very subjective. And a lot of us who have body image issues, we don't see it anyways. But strength, we can measure that. A below parallel squat is a below parallel squat. We know if we did 200 or 500. Measure it with the weights. Deadlift, you know you lifted it or not. This is quantifiable. You're putting in hard work for self-improvement and watching it happen. You can measure the self-improvement objectively. You can set aside, there's no emotions, there's no subjectivity. You can see the visual self-improvement in numbers and the weight on the bar. What does that then do? Because everyone who's experienced these things, it's a self-esteem problem. Your sense of self-worth has been destroyed. When you've been abused like as a child, or you've been sexually assaulted, you feel like nothing. You've been dehumanized. You've been dehumanized. Right? It helps you build that back up. Same thing, how about the veteran? How about the veteran who was used to being a bad mofo, and now they feel like a helpless baby? When the PTSD hits, it's the exact same emotion. It is the same emotion. But then they no longer feel helpless. They're putting hard work into building their self, because that destroys their self-esteem. Okay? Their self-esteem is crushed oftentimes at that point, especially once they rotate out. And all that's gone. And all they have is nightmares. Okay? Same sort of nightmares the abuse survivor has. They haunt you at night. Builds you back up, and you realize that you are worth something, that you are strong, that you are valuable, and you see the tangible benefits. I am putting in the hard work to improve myself, and it's having a measurable benefit over the months and years. That is a powerful thing for people who have been made to feel like nothing. It is powerful beyond measure. That's why I advocate strength training for abuse survivors. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.